All right, again, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Today we're going to be discussing the SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research, and the STTR, Small Business Technology Transfer, federal R&D funding programs, and an introduction to those programs. And we're going to take a little bit of a deeper dive than just a simple programmatic introduction. We'll talk about kind of the core content that goes into a strong proposal, just to give you all a good feel of what goes into a good package when it's submitted to the federal agencies for review. So my name is John Yaveri. I'm the SBIR Program Specialist with the Small Business and Technology Development Center. Today we have with us Joel Googe, who is the Procurement Specialist in the Central Region of North Carolina. Joel's going to do a little introduction about himself. Many of you know him already. He'll talk a little bit about the PTAC program, and then we'll turn it back over to myself for the dive into the SBIR program. A couple of housekeeping notes. Everybody is on mute, so at the end of the session or during it, if you wish, you can feel free to type in questions in the question field on the right-hand side of your screen. Those will appear for us, and we'll cover answers to those questions at the very end. So right now, we'll turn it over to Joel to talk about the PTAC program.
Thank you, John. As John mentioned, my name is Joel Googe, and I'm an advisor with the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. I'm located at NC State. I am co-located with the SBTDC Center at NC State, as well as the SBTDC office in Chapel Hill. I am the advisor for the Raleigh-Durham Chapel Hill region. The North Carolina PTAC is funded in part by the Defense Logistics Agency, as well as additional funding that comes through agreements with state and local agencies. NC PTAC offers no fee confidential assistance to clients that want to work with government contracting. We assist our clients in selling their goods or services to the appropriate government agency, whether it's local, state, or federal. The NC PTAC covers all 100 counties in the state of North Carolina, and we are co-located with the SBTDC on the University of North Carolina system campuses across the state. Currently, we have 7 PTAC advisors along with our state director. And our mission is to generate employment and improve the overall economic condition of North Carolina. We do that by assisting our clients in any kind of education or need for working with the government agencies that they're choosing to work with. We help them complete mandatory and beneficial registrations, the registrations that are needed that are basic to becoming a vendor with a state or government agency. We also help in identifying business development programs and certifications that our clients are qualified to obtain, one of which is through the Vets First program with the VA, where the PTAC advisors across the state of North Carolina are the verification assistance counselors for this VA program. We also help our clients by doing research on contract history for local, state, and federal governments, and we can help our clients determine first if the government is purchasing what the good or service that the client is selling, and from that we can determine what agency, what office of that agency is doing the purchasing. We can help with coming up with contact information so that our clients can reach out and make that very important personal relationship with that contracting officer and that agency. And through that research, we can also give them an idea of who also in their industry is providing and selling to the government. We can give them some idea of what the government is paying for that good or service. And we can also help them understand, any kind of trends or cycles that this may be going through by looking at that research history. We assist our clients with locating the specifications and standards that come out with the open solicitation, so that our clients can be sure and be confident that they are answering the solicitation in the way that should be, and that they can perform the contract to the specifications and requirements set forth in the solicitation. We also help our clients in finding contracting opportunities through education with using what used to be FedBizOff, but is now under the beta.sam.gov domain. We also offer the ProBid bid matching service to our clients, which will give them daily emails that will list open solicitations against whatever code, NAICS codes, or keywords that they have listed. So that enables them to have a better idea of what is open without having to spend the great amount of time it would take to look at every site that would be purchasing. Lastly, we help them understand the solicitation requirements and terminology, and helping them to understand what is the solicitation is asking for, what they have to do to responsively submit the proposal or the bid. And then we also offer to review the bids and proposals that they have written or before they submit them, to see that if there's anything that we see that they have left off or not covered as they should. Finally, to contact or find your local PTAC advisor, you can go to the NC PTAC website and see the advisor for your region and be able to request counseling from that advisor. Once again, thank you for joining us, and I will turn it back over to John.
All right. Thanks, Joel. Really happy to be teaming with Joel and the PTAC group on kind of co-educating our clients on very different government programs, but also very related. So again, my name is John Berry. I'm located in the Chapel Hill office of the SBTDC. We'll talk a little bit more about the team that I'm part of, the tech commercialization team at the SBTDC, a little bit later on. One thing I'll start off with by saying is that clients that are selling to the government, currently selling to the government, or are ready to sell to the government, that's a revenue generation stream at the business. So you can look at that as being one side of the house. The other side of the house can be, if you don't have it already, a research and development arm, whereby you at the business are developing a future set of products and services that could be of interest to the government or to the civilian market. And that's where the SBIR and STTR programs can come into play, is that research and development arm of your business. And if you don't have kind of two separate segments of your business already, Joel and I, are willing to kind of strategize with you about how to make that happen. So, quick program description of the SBIR and STTR programs, and the key words are those that are bolded and underlined. So the program is such that it's a non-dilutive federal funding mechanism to help small businesses develop and commercialize innovative solutions to existing problems that the federal government has an interest in, and those problems present a significant market potential. Okay, so key words here: non-dilutive funding. The government's not taking an ownership or an equity stake in the product that you develop or your business. It's to help small businesses. It's not to help large corporations, small businesses under 500 people in size. It's to help commercialize innovative solutions. So it's not a mechanism simply for a business to carry out research just for the sake of research. The program to help a business carry out research for the sake of commercializing that research into a product. And that thing that you're developing has to have with it a significant market potential. So that is kind of an overview of the program and the very key points associated with it. So who is this small business? The small business, as I mentioned, is any company that's under 500 people in size. And the small business is the entity that's an awardee of an SBIR or an STTR grant or contract. That business must be a for-profit entity, can't be non-profit or not-for-profit. Has to be at least 51% owned by individuals. What that means is that it can't be majority owned by a large corporation. It can't be majority owned by investors in a large equity group. Okay, it can be minority owned by investors, but it's got to be at least 51% still owned by individuals, and again, under 500 people in size. Interestingly, the program is helping primarily the smallest of the small businesses out there. Over 50% of the awards made to companies are under 10 people in size. So it is truly those small of the small companies taking best advantage of this program. And perhaps one of the main reasons for that is because, number one, a company with over 10, 20, 30 people in size probably has other mechanisms that they can pull from for research and development funding. And perhaps they're at a point where they don't feel that they need to continue doing very innovative early stage research and development. So two of those reasons, and the smallest of the small are the most agile, the most have the most ability to kind of turn on a dime and really stay focused on innovative challenges in the marketplace. So some specific key points about the SBIR program, and we'll talk specifically about SBIR here, and in the next slide, some specifics about STTR. So SBIR, again, stands for Small Business Innovation Research. Federal agencies with research and development budgets over $100 million a year are required to participate in the SBIR program. There are 11 federal agencies that meet that $100+ million criteria. This year alone, over $3.2 billion is going to be awarded through the SBIR program to companies all across the country. Since the program started back in 1983, over $20 billion through about 70,000 unique awards have been made. The program's had a significant economic development benefits in terms of employment growth. Over 1.5 million individuals are employed with companies that either have or have in the past had SBIR awards. And of those awardees, about 1 in 9 go on to attract equity financing. So if you've ever been through the process of trying to secure equity financing, you know that it's extremely difficult. Investors are very, very picky about who they invest in, and they're looking for lower risk opportunities. And the SBIR program is a terrific way for a company to decrease or limit the risk associated with whatever their research and development aims are. So a great funding leveraging tool for private capital. Now, STTR, on the other hand, is a sister program, very similar to SBIR, but there are a couple of key differences. STTR was built around the premise that there could be great potential for cooperative research and development between small businesses and U.S. research institutions. In other words, in most cases, universities. So the government back in 1984 saw that, wow, there should be some more of this cooperative research going on between small businesses and universities, and kicked off the STTR program. About 0.5% of the top 5 agencies with budgets over $1 billion a year are required to participate, and that equates to about $453 million annually. And again, the top 5 of the largest agencies are required to participate. Okay. So what I like to start talking about with clients when they are considering the SBIR or STTR programs is, what is the end product? What is the end game of the research and development that they wish to carry out? Okay, so looking 5, 10 years down the road, what do they hope is going to be the end game? And what the end is focused on commercialization. It's the commercialization, or the taking to the market of the end product or service or good that the research and development that the company has proceeded with through the SBIR or STTR mechanism has led to. Okay, so that end product is getting to the hands of users, and those users are in turn paying for the use of that technology. Okay, that is what commercialization is. Okay, so again, in other words, you're taking that novel, innovative product or solution that you've developed through using federal R&D dollars that fulfills a specific agency interest or public need. Okay, and we'll delve into these points right here. So both the SBIR and STTR programs are broken into 3 phases. The first 2 are fundable. Third phase, again, is commercialization. So delving into phase 1. Phase 1 is a 6 to 9 month part of the project whereby you are developing a proposal and responding to a solicitation that the federal government has proposed, and you're carrying out a proof of concept type study. Okay, so that at the end of that phase 1, you have data generally that demonstrates that the technology that you are developing actually works. Okay, you prove the feasibility. In a lot of phase 1s, feasibility is not proven, and that's absolutely fine. That's the whole goal of the phase 1, is to prove or disprove feasibility of a high-risk project. Phase 1 awards are generally between $150,000 and $250,000, again, 6 to 9 months of time to carry out that work. And award rates are not all that bad, about 15 to 20%. If you've been able to prove or provide strong data that proves feasibility, you're eligible to move on to phase 2, and that requires a separate proposal to be submitted. Phase 2 is all about further developing that prototype, getting the prototype out into the field, working the bugs out, getting it basically into the most hands as you possibly can through beta tests, etc., so that by the end of the phase 2, you are as close as possible to a commercializable, ready to go to market product. Now you can imagine that different technologies or different research projects may or may not be able to get to commercialization just using a phase 1 and a phase 2 SBIR or STTR. So phase 2 provides about 24 months of time, about $1 million to $1.5 million. Award rates are about 30 to 40%. So think about perhaps a piece of software that is going to be used by the military and a fighter jet. Having a phase 1 that's awarded $200,000 and a phase 2 that's awarded $1 million, that could very well be enough funding and enough time to get you to a point where you can hand that technology or that product off to the military, and they can incorporate it into their systems. On the flip side, if you're looking at a pharmaceutical, $150,000, $250,000 for a phase 1, $1 million, $1.5 million for a phase 2 is really just going to be a drop in the bucket. The very probably just cover 1% of the total development cost of that pharmaceutical. So that means that there oftentimes, depending on the technology, is a big gap between the end of phase 2 and the beginning of phase 3 in terms of funding availability. The government, in terms of the SBIR, STTR programs, often steps out of the way in terms of being able to provide funding for this big gap. And this is where equity funding generally comes into play, filling that final R&D gap between phase 2 and commercialization. So again, in a nutshell, phase 1, phase 2 may or may not be enough funding to get you to the point where you can fully commercialize whatever you're developing. Here's a list of those 11 agencies. Those 5 agencies on the left side of the screen are the 5 largest, and they participate in both SBIR and STTR programs. The 6 on the right are the smallest, and those only participate in SBIR. Now you can see all of the agency names are those that you're very familiar with from reading in the news. Interestingly, they all have obviously significant research and development budgets, right? Or otherwise they wouldn't be part of this program. You may come into, or you may have the inclination that you have a pretty good understanding of what each agency funds. Department of Defense, obviously, weaponry, soldier issues, etc. NIH, everything health, National Science Foundation, very scientific stuff. But when you really start to delve into the interest within these agencies, you would be very, very surprised at the vast array of interest that they have that you wouldn't have imagined. So tip at the bottom of the screen, very important. Don't judge an agency simply by its name. Keep an open mind as we start to think about which agency might be the best home for you to submit a proposal to. Now, of those 11 agencies, we can further break them into 2 different schools, we call them. One school is contracting agencies, and the other school is granting agencies. Now, contracting agencies are those, for example, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, NASA, EPA. Those agencies often establish plans or protocols or requirements that they are then pushing out to the small business to say, hey, can you help us with the development of a technology that we really need? So the topics that they push out to small businesses are often very focused, okay? They know exactly what they need out in the fields, and they're basically requesting of you to come provide them with a very particular solution to that problem that they're having. Oftentimes, those contract agencies use a procurement mechanism, which Joel and the rest of the PTAC team can help further educate you about. But what that means is that those agencies are often the end buyer, or the prime contractor who has a contract with that agency is the end buyer or user of your technology. So going back to that software for use in a jet fighter, right? Air Force, for example, would be funding that effort, and Air Force or Lockheed or Northrop would be the end buyer or user or implementer of that technology. So when you do business or submit a proposal to a contract agency, often you've got a procurement mechanism almost built right into it. Granting agencies, on the other hand, are very, very different. The investigator, or the small business, is the entity that kind of initiates the idea or the approach that is going to be used in your phase 1 research plan. The topics that the agencies push out are often much less specific. You often have more flexibility, and it allows upfront payment for the services that you provide. So here's a list of those 11 agencies and the breakdown of that $3.28 billion. You can see clearly that DoD is the big player on the block on the contracting side of things. NIH, or in other words, Health and Human Services, is a close second, followed by Department of Energy, National Science Foundation, and NASA. All the way down to the Environmental Protection Agency with only $3.6 million. So you can kind of clearly see where the research and development interests are within the government, whether that's good, bad, or indifferent. That's not really for us to decide, but it's here for us to work with. Department of Defense is, again, by far the largest agency. However, in North Carolina, we are not very well, we'll say, accounted for when it comes to awards from DoD. So we believe that there's a very strong opportunity for North Carolina businesses to really look closely at Department of Defense opportunities, of which there are the technology areas that they're interested in are vast. We should really look to them as being a better funding mechanism for our companies in North Carolina. So the next point that we'll cover is kind of, where do you go from here? You know, if this program sounds like it's an interesting area that you'd like to delve further into, your next piece of homework is going to be solicitation searching. So as Joel was mentioning before, there are many tools out there for you to look at open solicitations, historical solicitations, and that's the same idea with the SBIR and STTR programs. What we often recommend is a site called SBIR.gov. Very nice, clean, easy to use website that can be used for many things, and we'll cover a couple of those items here now. The first thing that you can use this site for is the red circled area, where you can search for open, future, and closed solicitation topics. So open topics are those that you can submit a proposal for. The deadline has not yet passed. Future topics are those that have not officially been released yet. And then closed topics are all those in the past for which the proposal submission deadline is already gone. Okay. So from here, you can start to get a very good idea of which agency has an interest in your area of technology. Once you have identified maybe 2 or 3 agencies with potential interest in what you do, you can further dive into each of the 11 agencies' websites. Okay, so each agency has their own specific SBIR and STTR sections associated with them. And the site here, sbir.gov/solicitations, lists all of those agencies' websites in one place. So again, very easy to go to. Another thing that Joel was mentioning is the importance of looking at previously awarded contracts and grants. The SBIR.gov site also has the ability to do that for you as well. So you can drill down by keyword or company or geographic area. You can drill down by phase 1 or phase 2 award, and it will show you both the company or the companies. It will show you where they're located. I believe it also shows you their contact information, as well as the complete abstract, which is generally a 250 to 500 word overview of their proposal that was awarded. So again, looking at historical data often will be a very good step for you in trying to build a foundation of where do we go with our idea and where do we go with the proposal. So SBIR.gov, very good site for you to delve into. One of the beauties of this program is that a small business has the ability to submit multiple proposals to multiple agencies. So first, projects can be submitted to different agencies for similar work. Okay. Of course, only if you find an area of interest at different agencies. Okay. And of course, you must alter your proposal to fit the different agencies' formats in terms of their proposal submission, et cetera. Okay. So in a nutshell, you can submit multiple proposals to different agencies for the same technology if you wish. On the flip side, you can submit, oftentimes, there are a couple of exceptions to this, multiple proposals to the same agency for different projects. Okay. Now, however, if you are lucky enough to get awarded from two different agencies for the same research plan, you would have to turn down one. Okay, so you can't double dip. You have to turn one down. However, and we often suggest this as a strong strategy. Break your technologies down, your technology areas of interest down into different silos. Each research and development project that could fit into a phase 1 and a phase 2 could potentially lead to its own individual commercializable product at the end of the day. So if you say, okay, we're great at software development or artificial intelligence or what have you, try to break those into different bite-sized chunks, again, each of which would be able to incorporate a phase 1 and a phase 2, each lead to its own commercializable product. You can submit each of those different proposals, again, to the same agency or different agencies, depending on what their interests are. And at the end of the day, what that leads you to is a potential kind of menu of products that you've developed in a non-dilutive fashion that then can be commercialized. Okay, so using this program over and over and over again is a very strong strategy. Okay, we highly suggest that you incorporate into your business strategy to do that, and not to say, okay, let's try to get one SBIR or one STTR project off the ground, and then our business will be off and running and we're good to go. No. You should always be developing new products that are cutting edge, innovative, and use the SBIR program to its entirety over and over again. So communicating with the agency. Once you've identified a handful of agencies that appear to have an interest in what you do, the next point is to communicate directly with that program manager, that program management staff at the agency. The larger agencies have quite a large group of individuals that are program managers, and they break them down by topic areas. Some of the smaller agencies like EPA and USDA only have 1 or 2 people, and they're your point of contact. So if you're thinking DoD, it's going to take a little bit of time to kind of figure out who within the kind of the chain of command in the SBIR office is the right person for you. But generally, each solicitation that you identify will have a point of contact, and it's a very, very useful thing for you to email and ultimately have a phone call with that point of contact. And the goal of that communication is to really ensure that what you're reading in the solicitation is what you think it says, right? It says one thing, but the agency might mean something else. So if you don't have that one-on-one communication, you're not really going to have that kind of inside information that you may not otherwise have. Some agencies, like the Department of Energy and National Science Foundation, actually require you to submit a letter of intent or a pre-proposal, and they use that mechanism to do exactly what a phone call would do. So, for example, National Science Foundation (NSF) requires that you submit I think it's a 3 to 5 page document outlining what you hope to accomplish, what you think your research is going to look like, and they'll provide feedback and give you a yes or a no as to whether you should go on and devote time writing an entire proposal. And at the SBTDC and our tech group, we can help you kind of maneuver through what those needs of those different agencies are. So the budget is an important thing to understand when you're talking about these R&D funding mechanisms. Again, as I mentioned, phase ones have a range of $150,000 to $250,000. That demonstrates that each agency has a little bit of a different cutoff or total budget request that you can make. The smallest of the agencies, the EPAs, the USDAs, tend to have those smaller amounts of money available for the phase ones and phase twos. Bigger agencies tend to increase their phase ones and phase twos into the higher end of those ranges. The budget that you submit with your proposal is going to be broken into 3 different parts, and those 3 different parts are direct costs, indirect costs, and a fee, or in other words, a profit margin. This fee is a unique mechanism for the federal government when it comes to research and development funding. The agencies allow a small business to incorporate 7% of the total award amount that they request to go towards this profit margin. And that 7% does not have to be justified. It can be basically used for a rainy day fund, if you wish. It can be used primarily for costs that the company is going to incur that are not research and development related. Things like intellectual property, legal matters, things like helping to set up your accounting system, market research expenses, etc. So that can be, again, used to cover non-research expenses. The second part, or the second bucket of funds that you're going to be requesting in your budget, are indirect costs. Now, indirect costs are those that your project or your business is going to incur that cannot be directly attributed to the research that you're carrying out in the SBIR or STTR project. Okay, so things like rent and utilities. Rent, utilities, communications bills, those are bills that your company is going to have no matter if you got this project funded or not. Okay? So the SBIR program is helping you to cover those costs that are indirectly associated with the project. The indirect rate is what they call it, can be between 20 to 40%, and most agencies will allow upwards of 40% of the total funding that you're requesting to be allocated to cover indirect costs. So you can see that this is a great way for your business to help not just cover research and development, but cover some of those everyday costs that you're going to incur no matter what. So great from that standpoint. And oftentimes the agency, if you're awarded a phase one, will work with you to negotiate a rate that you can then use going forward with future submissions that you make with them. The third bucket of costs are called direct costs. These are costs that are directly associated with your phase one or your phase two project. Those costs are often salaries of the key people that are carrying out the research, supplies that are associated with the research you're carrying out, as well as equipment leasing and some purchasing. Okay, so about 70% of most proposals that we see go toward coverage of direct costs. Let's talk a little bit about the actual proposal. So when you submit a phase 1 or a phase 2 proposal to one of these 11 federal agencies, you can expect that at least 3 humans, 3 individual people, are going to be reviewing your project. Okay, and I say humans or people because you need to think about how your proposal is going to come across to 3 different people with different backgrounds, different insights, different thought processes. Okay. Of those 3 people, the first is probably going to be somebody with a very strong academic background, somebody that's been heavy into research or currently is a strong researcher. Okay, so they're going to be looking very closely at the technical details of your proposal or of your research plan. There could be a small business or a corporate scientist, okay, somebody who's in industry, but they're still very technically adept. Okay, and there could be a small or a business development person, somebody from either a small business or a corporate background, who's going to be looking at how you spell out what the commercializability is of your research. And these 3 individuals are often those who are associated with the grant mechanism. The contract mechanism, on the other hand, are generally in-house government employees or government contractors who are reviewing your proposal. That's not to say that they're not technical experts. They indeed are technical experts that happen to be employed by either government, the agency, or subcontractors thereof. They could be academics, etc. But keep in mind that the pool of reviewers that are brought on for grant mechanisms and contract mechanisms are different. Grant mechanisms, they use outside government persons. Okay, for example, people on our team at the SBTDC are reviewers of proposals for the federal agencies. Contract mechanism, on the other hand, uses purely in-house government contractors or personnel. The review criteria of a phase 1 and a phase 2 are the following, and we'll delve into each one of these briefly. The first is significance. Next is innovation. Third, approach. Fourth, team. And 5th, environment. Okay? So these are the 5 key components or parts of your proposal that the reviewers are going to score. And they score this based on the strength, obviously, of each of these sections. So the first section of your proposal is generally called significance. The significance section should be focused on you describing to the reader, okay, and the reader is, again, the reviewer, what is the pain point that you're hoping to solve, right? You're hoping to build widget X. What is the pain point or the problem in the marketplace that widget X is going to solve, right? Who cares about that pain point? The who cares is who is the market, right? What is the size of that market? Okay. You want to describe to the reviewer how important is this problem, right? How important is it to the marketplace that you've identified? And they're looking for you to educate them about all of these key points. Don't just assume that since the Department of Defense or National Institutes of Health is publish the solicitation that all of these 3 or 4 individual human reviewers understands completely what the pain point in the marketplace is and the size of the market. So it's your job to clearly educate them about that. And it's quite possible that you may not know all of these answers yourself at the time that you start writing your proposal. So this becomes a strong homework topic for you to really delve into your carrying out customer analysis, understanding market research aspects, etc. Right? So you're clearly in plain English talking about how many people are dying a year, right? How much of the healthcare costs in this country are attributed to this particular problem that we're focused on? How many soldiers are dying in the fields, et cetera, right? So you explain to them why they should care about what you're trying to accomplish. The next criteria that the reviewers are going to rate is how innovative your potential solution is to solving that problem that you just explained in the significance section, right? Innovation is obviously a very key point here. I is in SBIR. It was so important that they put the I in SBIR. And what this tells you is that the reviewers and the agencies are looking for you to bring to the table novel solutions to problems that they've identified, right? And when we talk novel, we're not just talking about you providing some incremental improvements to existing technologies, right? We're not talking about tweaking something that already exists to make it just a little bit better. What they're looking for is new outside the box type solutions, things that are very risky, right? They're providing you this phase 1 and phase 2 money for free to carry out this high risk novel research, right? And they're looking for you to provide a significantly better, faster, lower cost method than what exists out there in the marketplace today. Ultimately, what you develop at the end of the phase 1 and the phase 2 should have some intellectual property potential, right? Intellectual property is that intangible asset that you as a business need to protect after you've developed your technology, right? So innovativeness is a very, very key component. Next, they're going to rate you on what is your approach? What is the approach to you carrying out this research project in your phase 1 to prove feasibility? Does your research plan, is it clear, right? Does it have milestones attached to it? Right? Are you demonstrating that you can clearly achieve all of those milestones in the 6 to 9 months that they're providing you? And do you have some supporting data? Have you developed or done any research in-house already that you can consider preliminary research? Or is there research available out in your field that you can pull in to say, this preliminary work has been done by researcher X and they found this. Therefore, we believe that our research project really should be a sound methodology for carrying out what we want to do. So if you've never carried out a federally funded research project, it would be very important for you to bring somebody on board on your team as you develop a phase 1 and a phase 2 proposal that does have that experience, that scientific or technical knowledge of developing a well thought out research project. again, the project really needs to be milestone driven, such that at the end of the phase one, they want to see, the reviewer and the agency wants to see that you are going to have collected information or data that can prove or disprove feasibility of your idea. Right? And if your research plan doesn't go down that pathway to provide that data that's needed, they're not going to fund it. The fourth proposal criteria that they're going to rate is who is going to be carrying out the research and the research plan that we just talked about. Does the team have the technical experience to carry that out? If you're talking about heavy-duty software development, do you have software developers on board that have done this type of work before? They're going to be looking to see if your team has research management experience. So not just the ability to carry out the research, but to manage this research project. So if you've never been in receipt of government R&D funding before, it would be good to bring on board somebody who does, because they're going to want to see that. And then supporting roles. SBIR and STTR both give you the ability to outsource or to subcontract a certain percentage of the work out to third parties. So SBIR allows a small business to outsource up to 30% of the work in the phase one and up to 50% of the work in phase two. STTR has the requirement that a small business commit at least 30% of the work to a university in a phase one and up to 50% in phase two. Okay, so in a nutshell here, we're talking about the fact that having a collaborative environment between a small business and another small business or large business or university often is a great way to help bolster the team and bring people on board that you at the small business may not have access to just yet. The fifth and final criteria is the environment. Where are you doing this research? Who are the collaborators? Do they have adequate facilities? Do you have the equipment in place that you need to carry it out? And if you're in this space already, you probably will have access to these things. But again, this is one of the key primary funding, key review criteria. So just make sure that you've got facilities, equipment, et cetera, to be able to carry out the work. And if you don't have all of those things and you've budgeted to purchase or lease some of that equipment, make it known in this part of the proposal that it is in your budget to do so. So as you can see, just like the procurement process that Joel talked about, the SBIR and the STTR process that I've been talking about, the process is indeed a maze, right? There are a lot of pieces to the puzzle. There are a lot of different ways to perhaps get to the end goal. And we're here to help with that process. That's our job, is to help you get through this maze, with as little heartache and as little challenge as possible. Is this an easy process? Absolutely not. It's very time consuming. You're looking at 100 to 200 hours to develop a phase one proposal, even more than that for a phase two, because you have to submit both a research plan and a commercialization plan. So it's a big investment of your time, but we're here to help walk you through that process. So here's just a quick overview of the team that I'm associated with at the SBTDC. We're a statewide entity. Each of us comes with a different set of business backgrounds, technical backgrounds, et cetera. But just as Joel does, we're providing confidential one-on-one business counseling. Our team focuses specifically on helping companies that are really developing intellectual property-based projects, often those that are a good fit with SBIR and STTR. We help to review proposals before they're submitted. Some companies that are moving forward beyond SBIR often look at equity funding as being a good mechanism to help fill the gap. We also have a graduate summer internship program where we link graduate students, often from both MBA schools and engineering schools, with Phase 1 awardees in North Carolina to help them as they develop kind of the business components around a commercialization plan. And we also have a number of publications. We have a capital opportunities report, as well as an intellectual property guide that you can check out on our website. And here's the contact information of our team members. And by the way, we'll send out a copy of this presentation to everybody that was on today, just so you can have access to this. So at this point, what we'll do is we'll open it up to questions. For those of you who have any questions, you can feel free to use the question toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen. Type in any questions that you have, and Joel and I will answer those as they come up. Okay, we've got a few questions that have come up. Yes, Ed and Doug, the presentation will be available. We'll send that out to all of those that have been on today, so thanks for asking. Next question is, how often are the RFPs or the solicitations refreshed? Great question. Each agency follows a different calendar of when they release solicitations, how many solicitations they release each year. So for example, Department of Defense has, I believe, 5 proposed or solicitation releases each year. And each of those solicitation releases has its own submission deadline associated with it. NSF, National Science Foundation, has 2 releases a year. And 2 submission deadlines. EPA, smallest of the agency, USDA, another small one, they've only have 1 release and 1 solicitation deadline per year. So it really all depends on the size of the agency. Next question, how often is a presentation given or done? If you're talking about an SBIR presentation, we often do these, once a quarter, but we're more than happy to, sit down and do a, one-on-one presentation with you if you've got team members who would be interested in listening to more of this as well. Next question, what academic departments do you work with at Duke and UNC and NC State? We don't directly work with academic departments per se. we work with faculty members from all academic departments, of which obviously there are many. So we don't necessarily have relationships with particular academic departments. So I'm not quite sure, if we can help around that standpoint. Next question, are all SBIR's cost plus fee projects? I believe they are. So it's the fee is included in the total amount that you're requesting. So for example, at DoD, if the solicitation says that their cap is $200,000 for a phase one, your total budget request is going to be $200,000. And of that $200,000, you're going to be breaking your budget into those three parts that we talked about. Next question. Next question. I have many questions. Are you available to chat one-on-one? Absolutely. My email address is, if you want to write it down, SBIR@sbtdc.org. Again, it's going to be the email address that I'll send you the presentation from later this afternoon or tomorrow. So feel free to ask me any questions one-on-one. Next question, are grants that are awarded available online to review? No. The only part of the proposal that is going to be made available is the abstract. And that's only made available if the proposal was funded. So that abstract is going to be, again, a 250 to 500 word overview of the entire project, but it's not going to get into the details of the project itself. Some agencies have made available proposals that can be used as samples, so funded proposals that the company has agreed to put it out on the web for others to review and learn from. So NIH does have a handful of proposals out there that I'm aware of, and I think a couple of the other agencies do as well. Another question, you refer to the IP protection. I assume you're primarily interested in patentable inventions. Yes, the federal agencies, that's often a sound business decision on your part, is to patent or copyright or trademark whatever you develop, right? So they want to see that you have a plan in place if you develop something that is protectable, right? And most of the things that the SBIR and STTR programs do fund do have some level of intellectual property surrounding them. Next question, can the cost of securing a patent be part of the funding request? Yes, some agencies actually do allow you to use some of either the direct or indirect costs to cover patent expenses. If the agency does not, that would be a great use of that fee or that profit line item that they're allowing you for, that 7%. So yes, and one thing that I'll mention as well, in terms of kind of follow-on unrestricted funding, although the program is not live this fiscal year, the Department of Commerce, through the Board of Science, Technology, and Innovation, put together a program called the One North Carolina Small Business Fund back in 2007. And this program has been funded by the state legislature for, we'll say, the majority of years between 2007 and current. And that program has provided funding to match up to a certain dollar amount Phase 1 awards that are made to North Carolina companies. Again, each year the state legislature needs to refund this program, and given that the state has not come to a conclusion on funding of the state budget, the One North Carolina program has not been funded as a result of that. But most years the program provides additional funding to Phase 1 awardees up to $50,000. So if you get a Phase 1 and you're based in North Carolina, you're eligible to receive up to $50,000 match for one award per year. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I'd be happy to send you the link for that. But hopefully starting on July 1st next year, if the state legislature can get their act together to get the budget passed, maybe we'll see that program come back. But that money is truly great in that it is unrestricted. It can be used to help those business expenses that the Fed money can't be used for. All right. So I think that's it. We're at a little past 3 o'clock. I think we've taken enough of your Tuesday. Hopefully we've given you some good information to think about, good next steps. Joel and I are always here to work with you going forward. Happy to answer any questions that you have. So thanks again. Thanks, Joel, for joining us, putting this together, getting the word out, and we'll leave it at that and look forward to working with you going forward. Have a good afternoon.